Okay, so we all want to make a difference hopefully, in the lives of others that we work with and make a contribution. So I think there's a key set of imperatives or high priority action items that can make a difference for us. And that's what I want to share with you here today. The challenges that probably most of you face as well is that we've got a lot of failures. The success rate of projects is still pretty low. Budget and schedule overruns. Trust is lacking. Of course, a lot of dissatisfied customers, and a lot of people, a lot of organizations are not very customer savvy, if you will, or their customer service kind of lacking. And of course, we all know about the great resignation that's happened since the pandemic of people leaving. And why? Well, one of the reasons is leaders do not take care of their people. You've heard probably that people join organizations, but they leave because of their manager or leaders. And there are other reasons as well, but that's a big one that we want to try to deal with. And we know that new generations want different type of work conditions. Some of the same old or status quo isn't satisfactory for a lot of the new people coming into the workplace. There's a lot of politics happening in any and every organization. And a lot of it creates uneasiness and frustrations when people feel left out. And trust in both our institutions and, of course, our government right now is quite weak. So those are some things that are facing a lot of us as we try to make a difference in our work environments. So what do I think is necessary or what's needed? And we can focus on a key set of imperatives. And that's what I defined really as the necessary and high priority items. And I have had a lot of experience in working with different organizations, high tech and field and worldwide with people. And, I hear some of the same thing over and over again from project managers and leaders everywhere, that there's a lot of challenges and a lot of, I wouldn't necessarily unhappy people, but people who are frustrated with what we're trying to do. And so a lot of the desired objectives aren't really met. So we want to try to see if we can do it a little bit better. So a lot of people have a mental block. Okay, just a lot of things are stuck in the way of doing things. We don't see things differently. We want things to be different, but we have around to it. Okay, we just don't get around to it because we're so busy or have other priorities going on. But what I'd like to say is that I think each of us and the people around us constitute a treasure chest. There's a lot of things as we open the treasure chest that we can find are some ways that can be very much more effective, get results, and have a good life. So the objectives I'd like to share with you here is to try to focus and talk about some of the key sets of necessary skills. And it also has to do with our attitude and our mindset of how do we get extraordinary results. I have a double E degree in my undergraduate, and I'm probably, lucky to be a par as an engineer, but I can be extraordinary as a project manager because I think I have an aptitude and attitude for it. And that's what I think can make a difference in any organization. When you tap people's aptitude and their attitude is positive, extraordinary things can happen, even from average people. Okay, so what we're trying to do is create excellence. And in the people, the processes that we have in place, and the working environment. Those are key things. And I've worked with people that have been very toxic environments for how and I'm not talking about physically, I'm talking about the interaction among people. It seems to be very toxic, and that's not very productive. Okay, so we're going to I'm going to identify some imperatives that I think are important for leaders. And I'm not talking about it has to be the top person. I'm talking about an everyman type of leadership approach. Every one of us can be a leader. And I'm not one that's, my aptitude, if you will, is not for power. I really like achievement, and I don't have to be the leader. But if I find a void there, I'll jump in and be the leader. Or I think it's good to share it sometimes within our projects or in our environment. And what we really want to try to do is to see if we can focus on these key things, that we get the benefits, we achieve we get desired project objectives across the organization. That's what hopefully we're trying to do. So here's a slide that sort of summarizes sort of the key area of leadership imperatives. The leadership skills, we'll talk about what some of those are. A green ecosystem. This is the environment in which we're working. We'll talk about how do we make that happen. We're going to talk about there are some toxic interactions that happen, and we want to be able to eliminate those or minimize them as much as we can. And finally, we want to support organizational learning. And that means sometimes we have to accept failures, or what's our culture around failures? And are we learning? And every day's a good day, in my opinion, if I learn something and have fun. What's the secret to success? Any organization, here's a couple of them. Make yourself more valuable through the skills that you have, your attitude. You take on things that other people don't want to do. I've had many assignments in my career where nobody else really wanted to do those topics or those things. I've taken them on and made them very successful. You want to align with the organizational goals. That what is the strategy for the organization? And good organizations have a strategy that bubbles all the way down from the top to every level, but not all organizations do. So you want to try to understand, what is the strategy in your organization? What are the goals? What's the goals of your leader, your boss? Can you align with them and make sure that you're supporting those? And you want to work with other people who are like-minded individuals who also want to make a difference. I was part of an initiative, a project management initiative at Hewlett-Packard that was set up by our chief operating officer. So we really had a top-down support, and we were positioned in corporate engineering. I knew some people at 3M who didn't really have, they're almost envious of our initiative because we had that top-down support, but they had a grassroots type of approach. They found other people who were also wanting to make project management more effective in the organization. And so they banded together and they did it from the bottoms up. So by getting like-minded individuals around you, it's going to make a difference. And you probably heard the statement, we are kind of characterized by the 5 people we hang around with most. So you want to find people who are positive and not let the negative people drag you down, because they will. So focus on people and relationship and the interactions. That's what I'm going to talk about. There's a lot of task-oriented people, right? And I think what we really want to do is to realize, yes, tasks are important, and our work breakdown structure and everything about the project management methodology will focus on that. That's the technical side of project management. And we have the PMBOK, the Project Management Book of Knowledge. But that's only a foundation. And what really we want to do is the rest of the story, everything that builds upon that, okay? And the thing I also suggest is, as you're starting a project, what's the definition of success? And what I encourage everybody to do is to go around at the beginning of every project and ask all your key stakeholders, what is your definition of success? And let me say, eliminate meet, scope, schedule, and resources, because that's the basic of project management. But what's really important to each stakeholder is pin them down to one thing. And sometimes that one thing is, just, if you're in the government, keep out of the press. That might be very important. By knowing what is the definition of success of each of your stakeholders, you have a working knowledge, you have a forewarning of what it takes. And those are the things that will guide you. And if you don't know those things, but you just go ahead with the project as given to you, you may get it done, but you may not be viewed as success because somebody had some other expectations. You want to know what those expectations are. And then it's important to integrate key skills from a variety of disciplines and take the initiative and putting it to place together. I know when I was starting out in engineering jobs and so forth, and I worked on an MBA, and I really enjoyed the people side of the MBA. And I would read a lot of business literature and so forth. and kind of said, this is great stuff, but what do I do with it? And I had a chance to work in sales development at HP and learn the sales process and meet with a lot of customers and being able to work with the quality people, manufacturing people, R&D people. And I realized there's a lot of different disciplines out there. And I'm not going to be a master probably of any one of them, but I can integrate the key skills from each of those disciplines. And that's my role as a project manager or project leader, is to be able to integrate that. Because I've worked with some very, very smart people. And I will always admit, I'm probably not the smartest person in the room. But I can, with a process orientation and a people orientation and paying attention and taking the initiative, I can bring a group of people to come to a coalesce and work together, that they might be really split in what their approach to things or what they believe needs to be done, but I can facilitate bringing them all together. That's what integrating key skills will do. And a lot of times it's really nobody else would take on these issues. So if you take it on, that's one of your imperatives, is to do it. So what's a recipe for success? I'm going to say it's 2 L's and 2 M's. Where do you put a small effort to get a large impact? And if you have these 4 things in place, you can have a lot of impact. If any one of them are missing, it's going to be hard. So leadership learning means and motivation. So leadership, you communicate what new behaviors you're trying to do. Why are we doing this project? Why do we need these people, these skills? What's the change and the roadmap they're going to get to? Because the definition of a project is a unique new output that's never been done before, because it's unique. So if you haven't read or seen Simon Sinek's TED Talks on Start With Why, highly recommend it, because it really is important. That how do you get people to want to work with you? They know why you're doing it. And if they know why you're doing it and they believe in it and they believe in that, then the what and the how will follow after that. But if you only do the what and the how, then it's not as effective. Second one is learning. Do we have the knowledge and the skills required? Is the training is there? Is it comprehensive? And that's what Alfonso's in my book on the Complete Project Manager, we're trying to do, identify what those skills are, and I'll highlight those for you. And I know I was working on a new project one time. I was brought in because they liked the approach that I was doing for creating an environment, but they wanted me to use a new process and wanted me to be productive and putting in place. But gosh, I didn't quite know how to do it. And they didn't take the time to train or learn or let me learn it. And we struggled to be productive. The means, you might be lacking all the means. In fact, one of the things I realized that when I was my early part of my career at HP, we weren't selective. We starved all projects. Bill Hewlett and Dave Packard wanted to be very lean in not overstaffing and then having to lay people off. So all projects kind of were very lean, but we're trying to do too many projects. So we had to realize you've got to have a good portfolio management system to eliminate so many projects happening at the same time, so that with a good portfolio system, all projects get fully funded. You have the means to do it. And if you have all of that in place and the tools and the software or applications, then people can work on it. And the point is that if you are doing fewer projects at a time, over time, more projects get done. It might seem counterproductive, but you really want to have all the means being able to put in place for every project that makes it in plan, okay? And finally, you might have all these other 3 things in place, but people just aren't motivated to do it. The incentives or they don't know the consequences of not going along with it. So you want to reinforce those new behaviors. You want to have both the formal and informal. And a lot of times it's really paying attention to the informal organization. And if some of those things in the informal are happening, then maybe you need to formalize some of those things that you've kind of discovered by accident, or you find some high performance or doing some things informally very differently. pay attention to those and put them in place there. And for this, I highly recommend Alfonso's books on Today is a Good Day and The Influential Project Manager, because what he really does is talks about the attitude, a positive attitude, but in the context of project management. And so it's really something that I think is very important as a way to help people get motivated. And we'll talk some more about how it really does start with you. And this is the key point I'm trying to say, is behavior tends to change. And a lot of times we see that a lot of behavior is not productive. But if you get all four of these things in place, make sure they're all in place, that's where you focus, pay attention to them, give them a priority. That's when you can get more happening, and especially if behaviors need to change. How do you grow into a stage of consciousness that can support these things? Being mindful. Mindful means that you're paying attention to things that's happening. You know, let me give you an example. Just in the parking lot of a shopping, I've seen people, you know, they stick the cart out to the car to load it, and they put it into the bin for the bins, and they just push it and walk on, don't even look back. Meanwhile, it doesn't go in all the way, or it's going to fall out and go bump other cars. They're not being mindful of the completeness of their actions and what's going on around them. So mindfulness is very important. We have a lot of egos, and we need to sometimes tame what we need in order to pay attention to the greater good. And our own desires can sometimes steer us in the wrong direction. So we have to be suspicious of those. Fear can be very demotivating or impact or paralyze us. So reject the fear. Sometimes it's important to get out of your comfort zone and go for it. And to create no blame culture. And I even heard this all the way back to Dave Packard. If things aren't going wrong, he doesn't want to create blame. He wants to say, how do we understand what happened and change it and prevent it from being a mistake in the future? So a no blame culture is very important. A lot of organizations don't. They like to blame things. And, you know, we see that in politics as well. And, you know, it's very unproductive. Okay. And then your wisdom, your deeper parts of yourself, maybe it's intuition or things that saying what's right or wrong. I think Simon Sinek even talks about, when you talk about why, those inner sense of why you're doing something, if it doesn't feel right, it probably isn't right. So pay attention to that. Your ethic, mutual trust, and assumed abundance. Let me take the example of, I've worked with a lot of PMI chapters around the country or the world, and a lot of them have a poverty mentality. They don't think their members will pay to go for the training, or they think if you offer books for sale at a speaker's talk, that's being commercialized. So they have a poverty mentality. Whereas some of them, if they take a prosperity mentality, they realize these are all additional services for the chapter members, and it's an abundance. It's a point to saying, you don't have to buy the books if you don't want to, but they're there if you do. We'll make it convenient. And if it's something that's going to be truly of value, you're going to be willing to pay for it. And a lot of times, so I've seen some chapters kind of undercut their own prosperity because they have a poverty mentality that people won't pay for value. But if the value is there, you realize people will pay for it. So you need to make sure the value is there and have the abundance of it. You want to have your decision making based on integrity, that you are doing what you said you're going to do. There's going to be a lot of changes going on. We've seen the organizational paradigms change from in office, in person, to virtual. And, you know, that's starting to come back to a new normal, if you will, but there'll be some differences down the way. And a lot of things that's going to make a difference is your inner motivation. You know, pay attention to what's going around you. And one of the ways to really understand your consciousness is to seek the clues from the people through their words, through their actions, through their body language, through their facial expressions. When I've been in some meetings with some system teams and we're talking some topic, but I kind of see some people aren't, you know, their body language. You know, I won't call them out during the meeting, But a lot of times when we go outside in the hallway or afterward, I'll kind of say, I sense that you weren't too happy with what was going on. Is there something that is on your mind? And I'm doing it in private, but these are clues that are around us. And I do some online graduate courses at Northeastern University. And I really, one of the exercises is to talk about pick 5 people and identify how each one of them is motivated. And I ask them, what are the clues that you have sensed that you make them realize what they're motivated by? Are they motivated by advancement, by more money, by quality of life, being able to deal with family emergencies or activities? What are the clues that helped you to understand how people are motivated? And everything starts with yourself. Make the right decisions early and manage those decisions daily. A lot of times projects get paralyzed because a decision is not being made because you don't feel like you have a good solution. But yet something needs to happen. A decision needs to be made. So what I've seen some very successful people do is to say, I don't know the right answer, but I think this is the best answer we know today. So let's go with it this way. And if we find out down the line, as we get more information, we might change that. So it's not being wishy-washy and not being the flippy-floppy. It really is being included to saying we need to move ahead, but if we need to change, let's not get too rigid. In fact, one of the things I think is a disservice to the project management profession is when you have rigid project managers, that they just say, this is the way we do it, and this is what the schedule says, this is what we're going to do. Or even engineers, I have an engineering degree. I know engineers, we always want to get closure on what we're working on. But sometimes it says we need to stop doing that because it's no longer going to make our product competitive in the marketplace. So we need to stop it and change. And so we need to make decisions about moving forward. And it's being able to be flexible around the decision, make the decision, but be open to changing it if need be. How you manage yourself. Pay attention and place a priority in understanding, listening to people. Your example is going to be very important. If you really listen, you're trying to make a point or you're trying to get people to go with what you think is the right decision, but you need to also lead the example by asking people, or if a decision needs to be made, don't just make it unilaterally. Get the wisdom of the crowd to come up with the other alternatives that you may not have even thought about. Your example of being open, transparent, accessible, approachable, these are some things. And your positive attitude is going to make a key difference as well. It's like when everything seems to be going bad, but you really kind of say, all problems have solutions. And we just need to find out what it is and hang in there. And I've done that a number of times where, I'm working on something and it just, I don't know the answer, but sometimes I have to just sit back and relax and being able to say that, the solution is there somewhere. And a lot of times it's really go ask my wife to come in and within 2 minutes, she has a different point of view. And it's like, wow, I hadn't thought of it that way. And it's just amazing to do it. So the attitude of being able to be positive and work with others, tap their wisdom, it's going to be very important. You need to cultivate relationship up across down the organizations. There's a lot of leaders who are good at managing up. There's some that are good at managing down. Those who are going to be most effective are the ones who can do up, down, and across. Everybody is important. People make a difference. So those are the things you want to cultivate, get to know people. We've had the case where we were in a car dealership. We weren't happy with our sales rep, but we were working with the service manager, and she mentioned one of the other sales reps, which was really good. We had cultivated a relationship with her, and then we went with the new salesperson who was very much more effective. So everybody can be helpful to you in whatever you're trying to do, but you sometimes just have to put it out there. And I learned from Dr. Graham, my first co-author, put it out into the universe and let the universe respond. So whatever it's a challenge, a problem, or how to approach somebody, cultivate the relationships who can help you work through those things. The second point, who are the people who have made an impact on your life? On my seminars or in my graduate classes where everybody needs to get a grade, they actually have to write an essay about who has had an impact on your career. What leadership qualities did they embrace and how did they manifest it? In other words, tell us a story. I'm getting them to practice storytelling in a way of being able to say who has made a difference in your life. And they have to post it. I don't use, it's only they submit this to the instructor, but everything's in the discussion board. So everybody reads everybody else's essay. This is often the highlight of the course because you really get to see some very good managers out there of what they did. And the whole point is to try to say, by realizing what somebody else did that made an impact on you, what can you do to have an impact on others? And a lot of times people don't even know that they did it. And I often go back and say, have you thanked that person? Sometimes I've done that years later. Said, when you said something to me, that had a huge impact. Well, I didn't even realize I said that, but, I can understand how he would say that. And thank you for sharing that. You probably made their day. Okay. And the whole point is you want to be able to say, well, someday somebody really believe that you made an impact on them because you pay attention to it and it's important to you that you see it and put it in place there. You want to be teachable. You're continually learning. You're applying your flexible approach to leadership, very situational. So it's really know yourself, believe in yourself, take care of yourself first, and then take care of others. So you do have to take care of yourself along the way. What kind of mindset do you have? And you can read through this, you can see a lot of people have a fixed mindset. This is the way it is, and what we really want to say, and we've had some really good people talk about a growth mindset that's very different. I can challenge, I want to challenge myself. When I fail, I learn. Okay, failure is not something, sometimes if I fail at something, I'll let myself stew for a while and be down. But I realize, okay, let me get that out of my system. I'm going to learn. I'm going to do it a little bit better. And I'm inspired every time I succeed. So my effort and attitude determine everything. That's one of the key imperatives for our leadership. All right. So mindset, it's that assumptions, some methods, notions held by individuals. And where does it come from? Probably your worldview, your philosophy of life, the experiences that you've had. Many times when I find somebody has a very different view of something than mine, I'll really try to explore with them to say, gosh, what made you think that way or make that statement? And I'll learn something. Okay, so that's really very powerful. The whole point is to try to expand your mindset, be open to new experiences, new ways of doing things. We've been forced to do that through the pandemic, but it's really a good point along the way to do it. And your mindset really is your superpower. Your mindset is your foundation of everything that can make you an effective leader. One of the things is, what is your purpose in life? And purpose is the enduring reason for an individual or a group of person to exist. Okay, my purpose statement for myself is that I want to help change thinking to create environments for projects to be successful. My colleague Alfonso says he wants to try to encourage people. His purpose is to inculcate a positive attitude. Okay, your purpose will guide everything through the chaos that happens. And sometimes a lot of things are changing in your organization. Is your purpose going to change? If not, carry on and be flexible with everything else. Sometimes we need to change our thinking. And a lot of times we say, people can't change. People can change their mind in an instant. And a lot of times it's when they see maybe something drastic happen, or maybe it was a medical emergency, or they've seen the dreadful impact of something they did. And they can say, I'm not going to do that again. So there are ways that people can, if they see a good why, they can change their thinking. So it really starts with our own point of saying, what is my thinking? Is it supporting what I'm trying to do or not? Is my inner voice being very negative, or can I change that thinking to make it very positive? Integrated thinking is to kind of look at everything around and not just be very myopic and focused on one way of doing things, but you want to integrate. That's why you become more valuable in an organization, when you kind of look around and saying, here's some other things going on. When I first started out in the field with GE Medical, we had some fires to fight. And so, maybe we put out that fire, and next month the same fire came up. I'm saying, this is ridiculous. I thought we put that fire out. Let me put a process in place to try to avoid those things and be more positive. And it worked. Okay. So, we don't have the same old fires, we get new ones. And, that's challenging. When I finished the largest program that our field office did, I integrated to said, hey, how can I work everything across the whole organization for all of our installations, and made our metrics come from low for our district up to tall by integrating everything that I learned about making sure all the equipment is there, the site's ready, we have the people in place, and we know what we're doing. So, and we did a good pre-installation, pre-site check, and made sure all the right connections were available with the wiring and such. So integrated thinking. And the whole point is, we need to create value, not just produce it, but create new value and new ways of doing things that are valuable, not just the fact that we got our job done or we got paid, but we are creating value, and that makes for a good life. With your mindset, that is your superpower, okay? Just like Superwoman, Wonder Woman has her superpowers, Well, we have our own superpowers, whether this is some of your characteristics. Who are you? You're different from other people. You're unique. And one of the superpowers that you have, it's not the same as everybody else. You might be an idealist, a guardian, a rational, artisan, whatever it is, embrace it. Find your bliss, find the things that you're good at, and the things that you like to be doing. And sometimes to go a certain direction might be career limiting. You're not going for the advancement because you don't like doing those things. But if you really are in a place where you're doing the things you truly enjoy, you're good at, takes less energy when you're doing things that are in your strengths, that's your mind power. That's your superpower. Go with it. Once you have that in place, that's when you can start building up your skill set. And then you can say, okay, what tools do I need? But if you start from the top, let's get these tools and let me develop the skills, but you don't have that foundation in the mindset, it's going to be tough going. So really be able to focus your foundation. It's all about your mindset that can make a difference. Serendipity, agility, mindsets, those are something that's very important. You can notice the unexpected and connect the dots. These are things as the ways of operating. What are some miracles that can happen when you're working in your mindset? Cut through illusions and focus on the essence. There's a lot of crap out there that a lot of people say, whether it's our politicians or whether it's our boss, or maybe it's an upper manager, that maybe it's a sales rep. It's just, it might not be everything that's the truth. But if you're really trying to say, how are things really done? What's important here? What's the essence? What's my essence? And what's the essence of what we're trying to do? And focus on that. Get to that in place there, instead of just going along with what the status quo, what everybody else is doing. What is it you think is important to be happening in your organization right now? Okay. Seek knowledge from anywhere and everywhere. That's why he's talking about integrated thinking, tap different multiple disciplines. And we're going to talk about a green ecosystem. And this is the point of the interactions among people, that you want to create that if it's not already there. As an integrated thinker, you're pulling together pieces into integrated concepts. Okay, some people might be, very detail oriented and so forth, but I'm one that likes to see the big picture and be able to focus on things that's in place here and be able to integrate those to create value and satisfy your thirst for knowledge. You're a self-leader. You remove the burdens. When I was working in the field installing equipment, I always want to say, I started doing some of the work myself. I realized I can't do that. I'm going to be interrupted by my client or by one of the workers or by the boss or the business manager. And so what I had to do is to kind of think, okay, what are we going to need for next week to keep everybody moving? What are the resources I need, or what are the tools and so forth? So I'm removing the burdens, trying to get things out of the way. And when you focus on the environment as opposed to just tasks, what can I create this environment that removes as many burdens as possible? Maybe it's reports or metrics that are wrong, that are so burdensome that it bogs people down. Can we remove some of those or streamline them? Those are things that we can do to make a difference. Set geniuses free. You have probably a lot of geniuses surrounding you and all your stakeholders. Maybe they're stuck in a job that's not right, or it's not tapping their talents or their mindsets. So you want to try to look at the clues and look at the things that are important for people so that you can get to the point of saying, how do you get them to work in their strengths, in their mindset, in their superpowers? So you want to set their geniuses free. Design-driven thinking. Think systems, think everything that's going to be important, the blueprint, not only just a standalone solution, but how's this going to be a system, or how's this going to contribute to the overall effectiveness of our organization? And use verbs instead of nouns. And some of the idea of verbs is the fact that what should our product or service be? Okay. So that's kind of like the nouns, but a verb is what would be a better way to enhance the project, enhance the product. Okay, so that's an example of what we're trying to mean by verbs instead of nouns. It leads to action. Okay, a lot of times we get into a lot of debate about what's the right way to go. The whole point is discover solutions through experimentation. One of the things that I found as being a public speaker, and many times one of the hardest things to do is a one-shot presentation. I'm not sure if it'll work or not. So the best thing is that if I could do something and then say, okay, what worked and what didn't, let me experiment. Let me try something new here, and then see what, stop doing the things that don't work and try some new things. And experimentation is very powerful. In fact, when I was at this corporate project management initiative, we were very high-performing teams, but I think it got to the point where we were a victim of our own success. We had some very successful courses and body of knowledge and so forth, that anything we tried to do new had to be the same level of quality. Well, those didn't get to that level of quality the first time out. We had to keep experimenting, trying, and developing. And so it led to a paralysis about doing anything new. And I really wanted to try to experiment. In fact, before I left the group, I wanted to experiment with a webinar on speaking truth to power. And I didn't want to go through the regular way that we would do in the product. I just wanted to make sure I had my manager's support and his manager's support, and went ahead and did it. And it was okay first time. Second time was better, third time, fourth time, we really got it down. In fact, I had a question, this webinar helped me speak truth to power, yes or no? And when we started out like 93%, by the time the fourth time, we got 100%. Okay, so we're experimenting, we're trying things that we got feedback about what didn't work, and the technology didn't do everything that we wanted to do. And same thing with with doing some of these webinars that, some of the forms are very static. Well, Zoom is good because you can experiment and you can try different things, or you can do the animations and so forth. So there's a lot of experimentation there that can lead to better results, and realize I'm going to experiment. And sometimes you just have to tell people, this is an experiment. This is a pilot. In fact, I heard one talk about a project office. They said, well, we're doing a pilot. Well, everybody thought a pilot meant is ready to go, but it wasn't. So they changed the word. This is an experiment. And that changed the mindset of other people around, okay, we're trying it. We don't know if it's ready or not. Sometimes the words can make a difference. Okay. You want to create or generate value, not just provide it or destroy it. Sometimes that can happen if we demotivate our people. So very important that you really want to say, I am here to create value. If I'm not doing that, I need to do something different. Let me take an analogy of a compost bin as our career development, if you will. It's a robust model, it's adaptable, and it's a way to understand your career success in organic terms. A compost pan is a natural, ongoing process. And what you want to do is put a lot of stuff in there, a lot of food scraps, and some brown stuff like leaves and so forth in there. And for a while, it might be very stinky. But over time, it comes up with something feels good. It's a very dark color. And when you put it into the soil, you get a bountiful harvest. So you can take the metaphor or analogy, if you will, that this bad stuff we're going to put into our personal compost bin, a lot of the bad experiences, let me just throw them in there and say, what did I learn from them? How can I create more bountiful harvests and get great value by putting it in place there? Okay, and that can lead to our career growth. And realize sometimes, death, decay, rebirth. I've seen the same thing with project offices. Is it really solving current problems? Once it does that, maybe it needs to die as a project office because it's no longer valuable. Everything's been disseminated and all the new practices in place. Or has it decayed? Or do we need to rebirth it and reformulate it and take on a new challenge? So this is what we're trying to say. Compost bin analogy can help really support organizational learning. And that's what is very key as an imperative for all of us that we look at upon that way. So what are some enablers? Well, this is the pieces of a puzzle that form the chapters in our book, A Creative Environment for Successful Projects. There's 10 pieces of the puzzle, and we try to put it all together, and we're saying all these things can make a key difference. Don't have really time to go through it here today, but I think it's really the key point is saying all these are important. And, by putting them all in place, that creates an environment that can be in place there. And it's being able to say, do we have a portfolio management? Do we have a good selection process for our project managers? Do we know what the skill set is? We have people with an aptitude for it? Do we have the right organization, the learning organization? All those pieces are very important. The second enabler is really the idea of project sponsorship. And that has surfaced in so many studies, the pulse of the profession from PMI, and Alfonso's doing PhD research. Executive sponsorship is a critical factor for project management. And a lot of times it's very lacking. You've probably heard the term accidental project managers. There's a lot of accidental sponsors as well. And so that's what one of our purpose, if you will, is to say, hopefully in our lifetime, we want to try to make a difference in realizing that sponsors are critical to success. If you are a sponsor, or, if you have a new sponsor or you have an ineffective sponsor, part of your job is to educate the sponsor in what role they should be doing and what you need from them and what they need from you. Have that dialogue. So that's all the steps that we put in place in putting the project sponsorship, excellence in project sponsorship in place. So back to the environment. If you really kind of want to try to find out what's the current reality, this is kind of like a future vision, if you will. Here's an assessment tool that's available from my website. This is the short version. It's actually a long version that we have 10 questions in each of these 10 areas. that you can put it in place here. But you can really score yourself on each of these pieces of the puzzle. And you can find out there's some that are pretty high. And there's some people say, well, I scored low on Project Offer, we just don't have one. Well, that's okay. Go ahead and record it that way. And maybe it's not necessary, but, or maybe that could be something that you can put an action plan in place there. So what it really is important to do is to start with that assessment. And I've done this with like an architectural engineering firm. We had about 100 managers. We wanted to have them each fill out this assessment. Half of them were upper managers, half of them were the project manager level. And so we sent the same assessment tool to all of them, but we kind of coalesced or aggregated them separately by their roles. How do you think the upper managers scored the environment? Yeah, they scored it higher. Because a lot of upper managers don't really understand what's going on in the organization. By doing an assessment like this, you can get their attention to say, yeah, we've got some challenges here. Maybe we need to address them. And that's what this organization did. They all got together to try to deal with it. And the same thing for sponsorship. I also have a sponsorship assessment that you can put in place here to do it in place here. And this is really the cumulative data that I've captured over thousands of people who have filled out this questionnaire. And this isn't just the general population. These are probably your peers. These are probably people who have some interest in project managers, so they're qualified people. And you can see there's still a lot of room for improvement. And a lot of times even individuals might score the top part of these pretty high, but as you get down to the lower part, they score it lower because, yeah, they've got some pockets of excellence, but it's not shared. Project Office can maybe do that for you, or your culture can be improved. So if we're looking at this environment, is it toxic or is it green? How do we know what a toxic organization is? Here are some characteristics you're seeing. Trust isn't there, communications are poor, burdensome reporting requirements, the metrics are misguided. You know, we talk systems, but we talk teamwork, but we reward individuals. Cutthroat tactics in the politics and a lot of negative political practices. Okay, so this is a toxic interaction among people. We'd really like to say, how do we get to a green environment? Again, in the interaction. It starts with a shared vision. I ask people to come up with a personal vision, but then come up with a shared vision. And that shared vision, I've worked with teams to develop it, and it takes at least a half a day to a full day. And it's frustrating at times because it seems like we're wordsmithing, but by the time we get done, the energy level is so much higher because that vision came from the team members and it became shared. This is what we're doing. And I believe in it. I think it's important. I can commit myself and get my managers to support me to be in place here. It also is a sense that we understand our purpose, that why we are here as a team. Now, sometimes the way I approach this is to say, let's say I'm coming into your team meeting and I said, oh, hey, I just saw your boss down the hallway. And he just said to tell you that your project is canceled and you're all fired. Now, that's not true, but if that were the case, what's not going to happen because your team is no longer doing what you've been chartered to do? Are we going to miss a deadline? Are we going to screw up on a contract for a client? Are we not going to we're going to miss some opportunities in the marketplace? You know, what is that purpose of the team? And if you can't answer that well, maybe it's time to take some time to come up with that purpose, or maybe go away, cancel the project, okay? Our purpose statement for the project management initiative at corporate was to lead the continuous improvement of project management across the company. Our role was leadership. Our task was continuous improvement. Our topic area was project management. Our audience was the whole company. Nobody else was doing that. That's very unique to our organization. And then we came up with the vision statement to support that, okay? Trust needs to be high. when I was working with this one group, I interviewed a cross section of people, and it really came out that trust was brought up by everybody. And it turns out trust was the default because not that somebody had a cutthroat tactics, but they just didn't know the other people in the other parts of the organization or different offices. So they got all together, and I kind of said, your default is, I don't trust you because I don't know you. But now you're together, build that trust, and maybe create the default to being, I will trust you until proven otherwise. And so that can make a different mindset, different approach across the organization. You want to get cooperation instead of competition. Sometimes you have a competition to cooperate better. But I've been in cases where competition feels like, it's all about me as opposed to us. So cooperation should be really the focus. And people fully communicate. There's a lot of times you can view that there's a value to bad communication for individuals. Think about it. I screwed up. Do I really want to communicate to everybody? Or if people know what I'm doing, they're going to ask me to support it or ask a lot of questions, and I don't have time for that. So individuals sometimes don't cooperate or don't communicate. And so I've had the point where saying, we want to create good communications where people get value by communicating. Even if they have problems, they're going to get help. They're going to get it out there. I was working with one team, and the person wasn't communicating. I was being persistent, and he told me what his problem was. And I got all the right people together, and we solved the problem. And he later came back to our team meeting and said, I'm glad I told Randy my problem because he helped solve it. Okay, so I created that condition for good communication, the value of it. Okay, and then respect, creativity, influence. These are all things that you want to make sure are in place for your organization. So what are some skills for your environment? Embrace chaos. Okay, a lot of times chaos gets a negative connotation, but chaos is natural. That's how nature reforms and does itself. Unfortunately, we got a lot of wildfires going on around the country, but over time, that's how the forests are going to rejuvenate themselves. New growth can come out of it. The essence of chaos theory talks about the unpredictability in complex systems. There are no set patterns or schedules. Tiny initial variations can have a huge impact. They don't repeat, vastly affect outcomes, but it's unpredictable and follow patterns. So the good thing about this, tiny initial variations. Let's say you're doing a training session and the company wants to be very cost effective. So they don't bring in lunch. They don't buy lunch for everybody to keep them together. Everybody's on their own to go out for lunch. Well, if people are together in informal in the hallway or during the lunchtime, that's a tiny variation where you can learn from people, or you say, I've got this problem. Have you done that? And or maybe if you're at a session where, like one of the PMI seminars that people from all over the country or world come together, and the breaks are very important in the lunchtime, because then you can find out that you create a new friend that can have a lifelong impact on you, or you find a solution that you hadn't thought about that just solved all your problems. So tiny initial variations have a huge impact. Problem is, you don't know which of those tiny innovations are going to do. That's why it's unpredictable. But it's a pattern. It's how nature operates. It's how people operate. So you want to look at some of those patterns. And we'll talk about a couple of them in a moment. And then you can start putting an action plan together. You've got your assessment tool. You can start putting an action plan to put all these things together. Now, the thing that's important to us as well is to realize there's a model of how cycles go through organizations. There's a steady state. You've got a product out there, you've got a service, and it's going along. It's pretty good, best in the field, and everything's going well. But then something happens. Something changes. Pandemic was a big change in our environment. Maybe you get a new competitor. Maybe you lose your key technical performer. And maybe a new boss comes in and changes in your policies, or maybe the sales rep, they get a new commission schedule. You're into individual stress. And we all feel it. We get that stress. And we have three choices at that point: exit, voice, or loyalty. So you might voice your dissatisfaction, and that's not what the organization wanted to hear, your manager. So you were fired, you're exited. Well, you may not like that. So you don't rock the boat. You're loyal. You don't say anything. You just go along with what's happening. And what happens then, it gets really bad. You've heard the expression, things could be worse. Hang in there, things could be worse. So I hung in there, and sure enough, things got worse, right? So it gets into cultural distortion. At that point, you might voluntarily decide to exit, or this is when the organizational disaster happens. The project fails, the marketplace or the company is put out of business, or there's some big legal ramifications or so forth that come into play, and then there's a real disaster. And that's kind of what you've been waiting for. You kind of could predict that, but your voice, you wasn't heard. And what you did, though, you hung in there, though, because this is what you were waiting for. You get new leadership, or you get some radical change. And you want to be ready for that, because that's in the revitalization point. So the point is, when you're in that individual stress and can predict that distortion, take the time to do the learning, develop the new skills, read some more books, take some courses, all right? Or put a new plan in place, or a new product or service that, when the time is right, after that disaster, you are ready to introduce it, and you become the hero. And the revitalization is such where you now can adopt, adapt, and apply these new things, and you get to a new steady state, okay? Same thing for product development. A lot of times when the market is weak and the economy is slow, a lot of organizations cut back. Well, that's the best time to develop a new product. Not that you're going to introduce it right away, but when you come to the point where you're into that part, going up to revitalization, you're first to market with it and to be very successful. That's a strategy that only some of the few organizations embrace, but it really is a very effective one, okay? So now you're into a new steady state, and sure enough, over time, something's going to change. And actually, this cycle is getting shortened and accelerated. More and more, product life cycles are getting shorter, okay? So the other thing somebody might ask, well, Randy, I don't like that lower part of the circle. Is there any way to avoid that? Yes, there is. Voice with power. This is if you develop the skills to truly speak truth to power, and I do have a little process for that I won't go into today, but a voice with power, you might be able to avoid the cultural distortion. And that's what I'm trying to talk about in terms of developing a complete project manager mindset and skill set, okay? We use the idea of an organic molecule for all these skills. So what prompted me is that, if you got this multivitamin, it's this huge, huge pill, and you might have to take 4 of them a day, but you get an infection and you get a prescription for an antibiotic, and it's this tiny little pill that's very potent. How can something so tiny be so potent? So I asked my chemical colleagues about that, and they said it's molecular complexity. So the more these molecules put some things together, they can be more potent. Same thing can happen for us as complete project managers. We put a lot of these disciplines together, a lot of these skills together, we become more potent, okay? That's what we try to talk about, being a more complete project manager. And so here are 13 skills that are very much in place here. And if you develop all them and have all of them going, it could be a little bit like a roulette tool. As long as it's keep going and you support them and learn from them developing, you're going along pretty well. But over time, it might get to the point that you kind of realize I didn't pay attention, or I didn't even have a mindset to realize I need to be a salesperson. Okay? So now we have a different view. Our sales is really low. Our negotiating skills were latent and non-existent. The politics, I don't know how to be. I'm a political victim. Okay. My influence skills, personal skills, or, I don't even put priority in having fun. Okay. So this is how you might assess, maybe this is your current reality, or this is what can happen if you're not paying attention. So the assessment tool is also available for you. As here's that you can score yourself from 1 is low to 7 high in each of these areas. And then you can start putting that together into your own diagram like that. Again, from my website, in my final slide, I'll bring up that URL again. You can download this full or the short version of this assessment. When I do this in seminars, I have people go through and do this quickly and draw their spider diagram, and at their tables share their diagrams. And this is an accelerated way to get people who are relative strangers get to know who has complementary strengths to my own. Who's at our table here? Who can I ask a sales question of? Because I'm low, you're high. Or how have you been more effective as a negotiator? So those are some things that can start with reality, current reality, and start getting better. So here are just a few. These are the ones that I find most often people say their influence skills, their negotiating skills, their political skills, or sales are all pretty weak. And there are really some tools, if you really have a mindset, first of all, to realize that I can improve in these areas, then you can start looking at the skills and the tools that can help you do that. And here are just some of them that I've given you a highlight as a way to put them all in place here. Again, I don't have time to go through them today, but these are available in more materials, if you will, or actually even in the books as well. Most importantly, the thing that's most important is that you be authentic and you act with integrity and are accountable. Authentic means you say what you believe. Integrity means you do what you said for the reasons you said. More often, some leaders or managers have failed or been less effective because they violated the authenticity or integrity. Here's an example of authenticity. A CEO had said, we should not be comparing our metrics to ourselves. We should really be comparing our metrics with our customers or our clients, our competitors. And a middle manager was at a coffee talk and passing that along. And I went up to him afterwards and said, do you truly believe that? Because I know from understanding Dave Packard's mentality, he would never want to be compared to competitors because then you're looking at their taillights. He was always a pioneer and said, I'm headlights, I'm going in new directions. But the new CEO was trying to say, let's look at the taillights. And he kind of said, well, yeah, I understand that, but that's what the CEO said. Well, he was not being authentic. Now, there are some ways to say, our manager said to pass this along, we need to focus on hardware. I'm not sure that's the right way to do it, but let's try it. And if it doesn't work, we'll change. That's a more authentic statement in place there. Integrity. We were at a group one time where we're having a meeting, we're supposed to come up with our strategy, but then the manager usurped that meeting to go work on a different task that he had given from his manager. That was an integrity crime. There's a reason we were supposed to be there, but then he didn't do it. So he violated our integrity. And it just, when you do an integrity crime, it's not going to send you to jail, but it's going to just suck the energy out of a team. So you want to have that integrity that you act with it. Accountability is one of my favorite words. And it's not like things screwed up, who do we blame? Remember, I'm going for a no blame culture. Accountability, that's reactive. I'm using accountability proactive, in that really said, I want each of you on this team to be accountable for the success of this project or for the organization. Not just that you do your job, but if you see something wrong or not working right, do something. It doesn't mean you have to take ownership for it, but you have to do something. That's being accountable. If you create that kind of culture, behavior changes. Trust me, I've seen it happen over and over again. Okay, so we're trying to put all these things together, and there's hopefully even a warning. As you become a more complete project manager, your self-esteem, your greater opportunities, optimize results, your satisfaction may all go up. Are you ready for that? Okay, is your mindset, or do you have a mental block? Okay. Focus on creating value. All right, what we're trying to say here is people have it. What they're going to work on for a moment is going to on their perception of value. And a lot of times people have multitask. How do you get them to want to work with you? Okay. So you want to close the gap between insight of what you kind of know, but the true value that you're trying to create here. And you want to replace thought traps. Okay. Thought traps are things like, here's how we do things here. It won't work here. Okay. You want to get that out of there. Okay. So you want to try to ask, how do you get others to choose to work with you? In other words, how do they get priority to working with the task that you're trying to have them do to make your project be successful? There's no one answer to that question. I'm hopeful that you'll put this question into your mindset, into your lexicon, and keep asking it, because there are many answers to it, you know? And maybe it's that they get more opportunities to get to use new technology, or it's just more fun. So you want to shift from the ego-centered to echo-centered and trying to think not about me, but about the whole environment in which we're operating. We're looking for the greater good, okay? Not just short-term interests. We're trying to say our professionals getting the needs met in the work that they're doing that focuses with their mindset, their aptitude, and their attitudes, okay? The learning organization, the failures, experimentation are very important. How do we manifest career-enhancing opportunities, okay? Here's another secret to success, be a POO. This is a project office of one, okay? Or a business analyst office of one. You don't have to get approval. You don't have to get authorization for it. You're just going to say, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to take the essence of a project office and do it because I have a clear vision of what's possible. Other people don't share that vision yet. Maybe I have to operate in stealth mode for a while, but it's such where I have a vision of what's going to be in place here, and you're going to keep working for it, okay? You set a set of priorities and you implement those priorities, and you're going to be successful in doing it. And maybe you do it in ways that hopefully somebody comes back to you. You're successful when everybody else has failed. How do you do that? Okay. You've created pull. You tried to push and that didn't work, but now you created it through your success. Now you created the pull. So what you're doing, you're creating extraordinary results instead of average, and you are creating optimized outcomes. A lot of project managers get very focused on their outputs, your deliverables. These are important, but they're useless unless they create a business outcome, whether it's a service or a new product or something in place there. So you really want to focus on those outcomes and change that mindset to embrace that. You are focused and applied to real needs. It's not contrived, imagined, or I hate arbitrary deadlines. I have to get this done by the end of the month. Why? What's important about that? Just to make it look good or so forth. What's the real drop dead date where something has to happen? Okay, so real needs are important. That's the essence. You're focused on value creating activities, not just busy work just because you've been asked to do it. There's a lot of organizational patterns that go in place here. What I'm talking about is the imperative is to focus on relationships. Patterns, people respond to energy, enthusiasm. The most solid engineer can be enthusiastic about some things when they can share the why of what they're doing. And it doesn't have to be, bubbling over and so forth, but through the words they use, the enthusiasm, what they're trying to do, people will get it. Ask questions, really not being questions that are trying to make a point, but you're trying to truly inquire about what other people think are doing in place there. You're using compelling evidence and vivid language, your vision, your goals. Many exercises that people do is create a vision statement and they get a lot of jargon in there. So I really go through the 3 C's. Is it clear, convincing, compelling, and clear? And clear, convincing, compelling. You know, the compelling is the hard part, and also concise is the other part. Create your organic ecosystem. That's the things that pulling together all the things that we were trying to do. And when you're trying to do even accountability, get explicit commitments that people will be accountable. And we're almost hardwired as individuals that when we do that, we're going to follow through and do it. Trust, authenticity, integrity is your focus. So what's the challenge? Embrace chaos. It's there. Understand the patterns. Lead yourself first. Develop your emotional quotient. We didn't talk about a lot about that, but that's is developable, is changeable, part of your mindset. Understand the value of sustainability and creating a healthy and safer world. That's becoming increasingly important in most organizations. Your social responsibility. Keep learning and improving. Tune into the essence, not just whatever people say, but what's really important. Apply best or leading practices. Best practices, excuse me, are something that a lot of people have done and a lot of people embracing it. So it works pretty sustainably. But the real value might be, what are some leading practices? What's something at the bleeding edge? You experiment. It has the potential to be a very best practice, but we don't know yet. So you kind of want to try to apply some leading practices, some new ways of doing things. Build or regain trust, the big T. How do you do that? You can't just say, I want you to trust me, but you have to be trustworthy. You're viewed as competent and you're working for the greater good. You're transparent. It's out there. No hidden agendas. Okay. Get extraordinary results. That's my aspiration for everybody, that you can try to make that happen and get more effective in trying to everything you're doing. Of course, have fun. Put it on the agenda. One other way to look at this integrated skills, look at each of these gears in the direction they're going. These are, 4 of the skills that people often score themselves low in. If all of these things are going in the right direction and are fully embracing, you're going to get integrated outcomes. But if you kind of would look at how any of one of these things are not moving or going in the wrong direction, you're not going to get the outcomes. You're going to be incomplete on one side or more complete as you get those integrated outcomes. That's what I think is very important in being able to integrate the skills. Excellence. I am excellent. My mindset tells me that, but keep repeating that phrase to yourself. Even when you have a bad day, I'm excellent. Believe in your potential. Adopt, adapt, apply leadership imperatives. I've tried to highlight a number of them for you. Adopt means you bring it into your belief structure. You adapt it as a way that works for what you're trying to do. And most importantly, you apply it. You do something that's not just mental exercise, but you truly put it into place here. Make the commitment to do so. So kind of pulling it all together. Rule number 1, place priority, which often is your time, allocating your time, on people and the organizational environment. Imperatives are integrated natural living systems where people do the best work and they want to be there, and the burdens and everything else are removed. It's subject to ambiguities and chaos, and you're capable of bringing the forces together into powerful outcomes, right? What is rule number 2? When problems arise, see rule number 1. All right. So that's really a lot of what I wanted to try to share with you. I want to make a point that there's a white paper I put together that highlights a lot of these key things that I've gone through and describes the ecosystem in more detail. At my website, englundpmc.com, and in the offerings tabs, you can download this paper right there at the top. These other assessment tools I've been talking about are there as well, even a political plan as a way to do it. And also you have my contact information here, and LinkedIn, I'm there. If you really want to be into LinkedIn, it's something where I would enjoy. The diagram here, the triangle is the talent triangle, the triple constraints of project management. which has really been updated as well. I've overlaid it with the 3 circles: the environment, the sponsors, and the project managers. That green space where they all intersect is really the sweet spot. That's what you want to try to do. You want to expand that. And how do you do that? You bring the environment and the sponsors all closer together. The green spot can grow. That's your portal to achievement. That's where it's at. Okay. Thank you very much. Are there any questions?
Have you heard if you make yourself too valuable, you will not advance in your career or company because you're too valuable in your current role?
Yeah, that could be another cautionary tale that they don't want to let you go. But I think if your environment, if your managers are holding you back because of that, then you are probably in the wrong place. And, you know, you might have to make that career decision to go on. It's some consideration, but please don't accept that as a mindset that, I'm going to be too valuable and it's going to hold back my advancement, because they're going to realize, hopefully, if you do these things such as a poo, what it can really lead to is, you might just be asked to make a more formalized project office, take on a project office role, or pull all the things that you've done together into a way that can help the organization in a broader sense. That's a real potential, I believe. That's what I did out in the field. I did individual projects, but then I was successful in doing that. And then I proposed to be able to do it for the whole organization. And my manager supported that, and it became very successful. So again, it's a mindset. The question can be driven by that. And I hope that you'll get over it and be able to say, I need to do everything I can. I'm trying to have a good life. I'm trying to be a valuable person. And if I need to go elsewhere to do that, maybe that's a choice I need to make.
Right, great advice. Randy, thank you so much for presenting.
Thank you, Susan.